Welcome to a new era of wrestling podcasts, where the hot takes, fantasy booking, nostalgic trips, and everything that happens in your day-to-day life always comes back to the squared circle. It's the Everything is Pro Wrestling podcast with Mike DeSilva, Josh Flanagan, and Nick Flanagan.
And we are back. One shot edition. Let me actually scoot over to make sure I'm even in the shot. No, I think I'm in the shot. I'm good.
We'll get nice and close.
So, episode 25, Everything is Pro Wrestling podcast. Officially the Barry Bonds.
Yeah, by all means.
Barry Bonds episode. Yeah. Is that what this is?
This is the episode.
Okay.
It's actually fitting where we're going to go in a little bit. Why it would be the Barry Bonds episode.
That's very true, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So, very true. What a week. What a week it's been outside of pro wrestling as well as inside of pro wrestling, inside the pro wrestling universe, in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think that maybe you guys
we're bringing it along.
Put the animals up to this.
It's possible.
I wish I had that control.
So now have you seen people on horses on your street? Because I've seen clips of them like in the area trying to find
it. Kind of, because it was a rodeo.
Right.
So there was a rodeo down the street for why I don't know. We don't live near anywhere that would have rodeos.
With each passing episode, these folks are going to know where you live more.
Yeah.
For those who don't know where we are, the rodeo was in the parking lot of a mall.
Yeah.
It's not like it was in like a spot where you'd be like, oh, that's where a rodeo takes place. Right.
On a very commercial, busy road. So I don't really know
Also, a mall that I think is, while not doing great, still open.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like it's a closed. The mall still had to open for
that
business.
Mall is still real to me, damn it.
Yeah.
All these people did, a rodeo.
Yeah.
At one point, that mall was very busy.
Yes.
And where the rodeo was supposed to be was a parking lot where also would be full of cars, but nobody goes there anymore.
Or if they do, like, you can find a spot in the garage nowadays.
Yeah. Literally anywhere.
Yeah.
Literally anywhere.
Yeah. If you got to park more than 10 feet away, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Exactly.
You're trying to get your steps in that day.
Or they're giving away free shit. That's really the only way you're going there. Multiple bulls got loose. About 8 bulls got loose. I think they've corrected it. Said now 6 bulls. It was 6 bulls after all.
Oh, was it?
Damn.
Regardless,
one for each championship.
Yeah, too many of them.
Yes.
Bulls aren't supposed to be on the loose in my neighborhood, although I know watching this podcast, you'd probably feel that way with the turkeys and the bobcats and the deers and the coyotes.
It's very horses.
Yeah.
And now we've got fucking bulls. So, and it's pretty, I find it to be pretty ironic, coincidental, iconic, really, that Derrick Rose retires today.
That's true.
Because that's to me my favorite bull.
Yeah.
That I can really, I got, Jordan, I caught the tail end of his career, made me really a fan of the Bulls. Derrick Rose, my favorite basketball player besides Michael Jordan. So, somber day for me. The what ifs will always be, but I think the bull getting loose in my neighborhood, that should have been like a foreshadowing of that was about to happen.
That was part of the marketing campaign. I know he dropped a very cryptic video yesterday, which basically was like, all right, he's retiring from the video, so maybe that was actually step one.
Maybe,
we just missed it.
Yeah.
It's very coincidental that it drops it the day they finally catch said bull.
Right, that's what I'm saying. He was set free.
Right.
He was set free, and now he's on to the next chapter in a residential neighborhood.
I just also really like that they put up like chain link fence. Like, I could have knocked over that chain link fence and like, nah, this will keep bulls in.
Sunday, me and my wife were driving down where I live. The main road that I live off of is where all this shit happened. We had no idea the rodeo was even in town.
Yeah,
Sunday.
Why would you
rodeo there? Like the carnival, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
The rodeo.
Like, I would see that like every week. Driving in, you'd see like the carnival that they would have in the
carnival. They've had RVs fucking sales. They've had meat sales, classic car shows. Just your typical shit you typically find.
Local wrestling.
Yeah,
right, bro. Yeah,
back in the day.
Why there was a rodeo, I don't know. We didn't know the rodeo was happening, and we're on the way to my mom's house for lunch. Baby in the back seat, in her car seat. And I see a car stopped on the other side of the road, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like not just stopped, like pulled over, and there was a man in front of it, like looking towards the fence. And I'm thinking, like, oh, these people might have lost an ant, like their pet, like a dog. Right. They're trying to get, they chased it and they
lost their pet,
cornered it, whatever. And as we're approaching towards the end of the street, around the corner, right, because it starts to bend, all of a sudden there's 5 bulls, like in a line, as if they were doing it on purpose. I didn't know because his farm's nearby. I didn't know if maybe they like were. I have no fucking clue what was happening. So me and my wife like, what the hell? So I kind of slow down, and there's a guy behind them going, whoa, 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 like trying to calm them down.
Right.
And then by the time I got to the stop sign, boom, the bulls took off, and that was it. It was a wild bull chase for 5 days.
5 days.
Yeah.
5
So,
days.
yeah, God bless them. God bless those bulls. They just wanted to be free.
Yeah.
I just wanted to update the people.
Can't blame them. Can't blame them.
No.
Another bull set free in Derrick Rose, episode 25. What a start to the week. And then, of
That
course,
also worked. Didn't he wear 25 in Minnesota?
25 in Minnesota. Did he wear it in high school?
Okay.
He wore it to me. And
Yeah, he wore it at high school too, right?
All right.
Yeah.
So that it double fits.
He wore it at Memphis, I want to say.
No,
Thought he was
23
one
in
in-
Memphis.
Was he 23?
23 in Memphis, yeah.
And one in
25.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Was he one in New York as well?
I don't. That's where it gets weird. I know he's like 4 in
Yeah.
Cleveland.
It was a
I don't
lot of
think he
different
was
numbers.
one.
No?
I don't think he was one when he was in.
No, I think he was 25 in New York.
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
say,
Yeah, I think he was 25 in New York. Memphis, he was 23, I think. I don't know. It's all that matters. He was number 1 in the Bulls, one of the best Bulls of all time. Put him in the damn Hall of Fame. All
I
right,
agree.
youngest MVP ever,
Yeah.
Rookie of the year.
That MVP
Man,
season of his was incredible.
If it wasn't for the
The way he
fucking
got off the
Heat,
ground was just insane.
yeah, if
Yeah.
it wasn't for the Heatles, then they would have been NBA champions. They were the best team in the league until they faced them in the playoffs.
There's a team I like in the West that could also maybe make a claim for that as well.
Well, they would have won that year.
Yeah.
But the 2010 season, 2011, that was definitely the best.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the
Although
Bulls team, that was the MVP year.
That Mavericks team was also really good though. They beat the Heat.
Yeah, but I think the Bulls would have matched up better with them. I think the Bulls were a more complete team. I think the problem with the Bulls is that they couldn't compete with the freaking the star power that the Heat had, and LeBron just went dummy. What happened in the finals that year with the Mavericks?
Also should have beaten the Mavericks.
Yeah.
as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they
100%.
actually should have. Kudos to the Mavericks, but the Heat fucking just completely left their foot off the gas
Mm-hmm.
and
To
underestimated
be fair
them.
though, they also should have lost that first one to the Spurs.
Yes,
so, like,
it bounced out. It bounced out.
Yeah.
Yep, it absolutely
And they
bounced
should have
out.
lost it to the Thunder too.
Yes.
They could have went that whole stretch and
Yeah,
not win
they
one
They really
championship.
could have gone over in that stretch.
And Ray Allen?
Not one, not two. After all that, if they went over. Technically, would have been right because he never said not zero.
Yeah.
So
Whatever. Anyways, shout out to Derrick Rose. Yes, big week in professional wrestling. A lot to get into. First and foremost, we can go through some of the things, the bigger things that happen, and some wrestling programming this week. Smackdown. I was a big fan of the cinematic between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes over at Georgia Tech. I thought that was sick.
yeah,
I thought that was really cool.
Chef's kiss.
Um,
Cinematic is the perfect way to
Yeah,
describe it.
Yeah.
that's what it was.
cinema.
I mean, the
Cinema.
way it was shot, everything.
yeah. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before that like I do have a pet peeve that I think people overuse the term. This is cinema when talking about a wrestling thing, but
Yeah.
it 1000% applied to that segment.
Well, it was shot like a film. It was literally shot like a
Absolutely.
movie.
It was shot like a film. I mean, their performances were like, movie quality acting performances. Like, it was very well done.
No, the performance was done. The camera work was amazing. Even just Roman coming in,
Yeah.
7 black SUVs
Right.
made sense. Cody in the sports car pulling in
Also,
makes sense.
The difference of black SUVs to white
The
car.
white car.
Yeah.
Like Cody getting out his beautiful shoes. Like, it's the first thing you see. Like with Roman, obviously the power, the strength, but even like the promo, he's like, yeah, like this, I'm standing on your field,
Right.
But this field is in my city. Right. This is mine. Everything around here is mine. Down the street is this. Down the street is that. The Omni's this way. Techwood Studios is that way. Like. It was just perfect all the way to Roman walking away and being like, "You're in my way," and be like, "No,
That was such
that,
a good.
That to
last
me
line.
felt like Fast and the Furious, but like elevated,
but good.
Yes, elevated.
Right.
But give me more of that. I
Yeah.
think that's something they finally started to really dip their toes in during the pandemic,
Yep.
right? When they started to
Yeah.
do more of those cinematic matches or
I don't
pre-tape
want
matches.
cinematic matches.
No,
I definitely
no.
agree cinematic
Yeah.
promo segments,
Yeah.
but
Only do them if you're going to bring The Undertaker back.
Yes.
Exactly. It has to be
We
the
can
right
make him
character.
look better. Like
Yes.
they did with Sting
Or,
in
right.
AEW when he first came back.
or if they're going to bring Gallows and Anderson to murder them again at the end of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. Right. They got killed.
Right.
And I could
They got
totally
blown
like
up.
similar to Firehouse Funhouse match with
Yeah.
Cena and Wyatt.
Yeah.
I think we might eventually see something with the Wyatt Six
Yeah,
in that same way.
It needs to work with
Yep.
who does it.
With who does it, and I'm not saying replace don't make it a Roman versus Cody and have it be
Right.
shot like a film, but yeah, I love it, man. This is where you're taking it to the next level. Now, this is the production value that We're well aware of what we're watching. Okay, we're watching which the Vince documentary continued to reiterate throughout all of the episodes, where it was entertainment. This is scripted, but this is it's meant for you to suspend belief, right? So obviously, Roman Reigns pulling up with 7 SUVs, Cody pulling up in a sports car into a college football field just to have a talk in the middle of the field. You got to put yourself and be like, imagine if this was Batman and Bane,
right?
All right, they could pull up wherever they want,
right?
That's what we watched this shit for, and I thought that was so cool. It gave me such like a cool vibe,
Yeah.
And it set up their relationship perfectly.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, right now, yes, like, I won't fuck with you, but just remember, you're still in my way.
Yeah, the situation is dictating where we are right now.
As the rain comes down.
Yeah,
we coming down now.
Yeah, the situation they're in is dictating where it is, and I think that was what really shone through. And it was funny because even in some ways, and I think it was Bully Ray, I heard a clip he pointed it out where he was like, in some ways, Roman came off as the babyface there, and Cody came off as the heel. And it's like that worked so well because it wasn't in the ring, and there wasn't a live crowd there, so it wasn't to decipher and pick a side. It was like, hey, we're both in dire straits. Kind of, we need one another if we're going to conquer this. We know what it is, and when time is done, we're already ready to flip that page.
Yeah. I mean, it's your classic, like, Harry Potter, Voldemort, right? Where one can't live without the other. They need each other, but at the end of the day, they're mortal enemies.
Right.
And I think that's cool. I think they set that up really cool. I wasn't expecting it. I don't think anybody really was. Did they tease it that? I just didn't know.
No, it just happened.
I thought they had said maybe Roman was going to have some sort of say something, but they definitely didn't say it was going to be face to face, and certainly not outside of the ring.
No.
Nope.
Does that have anything to do with the Metro Boomin promos leading up to it? Was that what he was waiting for this whole time?
That's a different feel.
You know what? That's possible.
Right? Was he waiting for?
That's what they were staking out.
See,
with
that
Roman.
would drive me nuts because in the promo they're at they're at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and then this was at Georgia Tech Stadium, 2 different stadiums.
But are they
so
near
that
each
would.
other?
Not really.
No,
in the context of like big Atlanta, no, not really. Like Mercedes-Benz is kind of downtown near like the Olympic Park and everything. Georgia Tech plays kind of different part of the city, like literally right off the highway.
Right. Well, were they near Mercedes-Benz? I thought the Metro Boomin thing was the arena they're going to do Bad Blood at. I thought that's what they were staking out.
Well, State Farm Arena is
they're
right next to Mercedes-Benz, whereas the Georgia Tech Stadium is a good ways away.
The Georgia Tech Stadium also makes way more sense given Roman's.
Because he played there, exactly. Like you had to do it there. It would have made sense. But also, I'm sure it was a lot easier to get onto that field than it was Mercedes-Benz in the middle of football season. Like that also checks out. But it would have lost some luster for people who actually know his story if it was not
Plus, they put the cut-ins in of him playing college football at Georgia Tech, which was also a really nice touch.
That was cool.
The dramatic music underneath it the whole time was a nice touch. Like, the production of it was top-notch.
Yeah, the cameras were shot over either shoulder, looking at one another. It was so well done.
Now, if you're a talent, right, do you look at something like that and say, hey, this is a way for us to be on TV and maybe make our schedule a little bit easier? Like, not all the time, special moments like that, but it's like, hey, instead of us showing up in this city to cut a promo, can we pre-tape this, and that way I don't even have to show up into wherever, Providence or, like that might be something that they could utilize, and it does incredible work to elevate the story, to make it feel big because of the production that goes into it in general, but like also now you're like, hey, maybe this might even be good for our talent and their travel, like, whatever.
No, you would think it's a selling point.
To me, it has to be the talent that are elevated enough.
It can't be everybody.
Exactly. Like if Punk and Drew do something like that leading into the Hell in a Cell, that works perfectly well. Yeah. But if it's like Chad Gable and like, fucking Xavier Woods, you're it looks nice, but it doesn't fit.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, it has to be that elevated talent because they're the only ones who can kind of get away from it. But in turn, if you're taking that elevated talent and doing something more cinematic, now you open up ring time for that lower guy on the card, the lower woman on the card to now be in the ring. So granted, their time might be cut, but they'll be seen by the loud crowd, whereas the bigger stars might not be week to week.
Right.
Obviously, you can't do that all the time. Folks can be like, well, they're never actually here. I'm buying a ticket to see them. But in the right spot, especially leading up to pay-per-views or PLEs, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I agree. You also don't want to overdo it.
Yeah.
Like, because it could get stale after. If you do it too much, you're like, all right, well, I get it. Like, you've done this enough now.
Yep.
Like, because my one pet peeve with the segment, it's not even with the segment, I didn't like that they replayed it on Raw.
Yeah,
I was this should have just been a SmackDown thing.
Just leave it.
Just leave it there, and it would have been fine.
SmackDown, baby.
Also, when do you guys? So, I have a prediction myself, and I'm curious, you guys. When do you think the next Cody Roman match is going to happen?
Against one another?
Yeah, because I think it's going to be soon.
I'm gonna predict probably Royal Rumble. I don't think Roman wins the Royal Rumble. I don't even think he's gonna be in it. I think he's gonna fight Cody at Royal Rumble.
I
take that narrative completely out of it.
I have a feeling it's not going to be as soon as we think.
No?
I don't know. I have a feeling they're not going to. I don't want to say rush it because it doesn't need to be rushed. And I also think that they have other plans for both of them for WrestleMania. So part of me is thinking we might not see it until after WrestleMania.
I definitely agree it's not going to be at Mania because I actually think it's going to be the main event of Saturday night's main event.
Okay.
I think they're going to want to make that look.
That'd be cool.
The first one
and
back.
That is
mid-December.
Okay.
At the Garden?
Yeah. They're going to want to make it feel big, and what's going to make it feel bigger than Roman Cody 3?
Yeah, that is true. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because otherwise I don't really see, like, Rumble would make
Rumble
sense,
could be possible.
But also, I don't know. I guess I'm not really sure where they're going with Cody.
Right. Well, I still think the plan is
I think long-term is The Rock.
I do
too. But who the fuck knows how that could change?
Because I think my prediction for Mania right now, I mean, obviously, this, like you said, this could change. It's going to be Cody Rock for the title, and it's going to be Roman Solo for the Ula Fala.
Okay.
Ooh.
I think that's Mania.
You don't think they get to him and Jacob by Mania?
I think that's first, actually.
Okay, that's...
Or
part of me is hoping,
SummerSlam.
Yeah.
That could be next year's.
Ooh,
could be. We'll get to the SummerSlam in just a minute.
Swings at
one of the main events.
We're going to get to SummerSlam in a minute.
But I definitely think it needs to be for the Ula Fala because they've done this. They did it a couple weeks ago. That nerd moment here for a minute. Have you guys ever seen the Lord of the Rings movies?
Of course.
So there's they have the one ring, and that like really controls everybody. And there's this thing I've noticed Solo and Roman, and even Tama Tonga when he was like picking it up to give it to Solo. There's this moment where they hold it and they all stare at it, like
they all aspire to have it.
This is the only thing I care about.
My precious,
exactly.
Yeah, some Smeagol type shit.
I loved that.
Yeah,
and I think for the Bloodline, that almost might mean more to them than the WWE title.
When Roman put it on. Like a bolt of electricity went through him when he put it on for that moment before they beat him up. See, I think that happens for the Ula Fala before Mania. I think
I think
that
they
before
save it for Mania.
I think I get how big it is, but I don't know if it's nothing against Solo. I don't have anything against Solo. I think he's done well, better than we've probably even given him credit.
He's elevated,
especially in the last couple months. But for some reason, I think the moment at Mania, no shade to Solo, but I think the moment at Mania might be bigger than him when it comes to who Roman is in there with. I don't know if that's Jacob Fatu. I don't know what that looks like, but I don't know. I have a feeling that they kind of get that out of the way because they feel they can build something bigger at Mania, though I don't know what it is yet. So I know that's kind of a cop-out.
I think we as fans look at Jacob versus Roman as a bigger moment because we know it would be a better match. But from their positions, Solo Roman's the bigger match because Solo's currently the head of the bloodline.
Yeah, 100%. Today,
so
agree completely.
Unless they do something
I just have a feeling by Mania, which is creeping up, but also still a few big PLEs. You got Survivor Series.
You got the Rumble.
You got a few big PLEs to where I think some dominoes can fall. And I guess that's another thing. I think they get there sooner. I think what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is that match, especially for the Ula Fala, happens sooner because that battle is just so big and so much between them where Roman feels like he has to have that to be whole again.
I just feel like if you save it for Mania, it also makes the Ula Fala feel bigger.
Yes.
So that's the only reason why I feel like save that for Mania.
Now, does the audience at WrestleMania care enough about the Ula Fala that you want that to be like, like holding up the champion, the belt, the WWE Championship or the World Heavyweight Championship, that has like a connection to the audience and a connection to the company.
Well, I think right now maybe not, but you have time from now to Mania where you can build it to be
exactly. Afa and Sika not with us anymore. Imagine if they were the role they could have played. Remember when they came out and put it on Roman. But there's a lot you can unpack, especially if you start to pull family members in on it. I think they can. I think they can build it up. I do think, like, again, we're wrestling fans, so we can attach ourselves to just as much any fucking inanimate object as long as we put something behind it. So yeah, I'd like to think they can, but I totally understand your point of like that crowd is so different than the average crowd. That's actually a good point that I didn't even think of, is why you also want to save it for Mania. The Ula Fala is not there yet to do that match now, but if you build it up to Mania, it could be a big Mania moment.
Yeah.
Even one of the two main events.
I mean, we saw the crowd pop when CM Punk put the bracelet that some random fan made back on.
Hopefully he washed that before he put it on.
That thing been in some places.
Yeah. That was in a sweaty grundle.
Oh, man.
And then he kisses
places.
it. Yeah, CM Punk, you might have herpes,
and then remember, it was shoved down CM Punk's throat as well.
Yeah.
So, like, oof.
At least that was the next night. There was time for it to be washed.
I don't know that maybe it was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many washes is enough. Like, I can't.
Knowing Drew, he took more pleasure in that than anything else. Yeah, like, he's like, yeah, hell yeah.
Yes.
How my nuts taste.
He's like, I had swamp ass that day too.
Yeah, well, I think they just always do, brother.
Probably,
I think in that ring, if you ain't swamping, you ain't living.
And I'd like to think all wrestlers just run hot.
Yeah, they just run hot.
I've noticed that.
I've
been watching the doc a little bit, seeing I forgot who it was, but they were like soaked in it. My wife's like, "Yo, what the fuck's wrong with this guy?" And I'm like, "Babe, this is just what it was."
Yeah, that's how it was.
Was it Shane? Shane's a very sweaty man.
It fucking was Shane.
Shane
was
so
Shane.
much.
Shane scares the shit out of me, especially this the most recent iteration of Shane, where he was like 32 and on, like WrestleMania 32 and on.
Yeah.
Sweats a lot, red face.
So much, yeah.
Definitely yoked up,
Different
probably
color,
on something.
Yeah.
Performance enhancing, and I'm like, is this dude gonna?
And also somehow more egotistical than he was when he was playing an egotistical maniac.
Yeah, but you know what? I fuck with Shane because I think that
he's the best wrestler in the world.
Well,
I mean, he has the trophy. He's the best wrestler in the world.
I know, but
he didn't say he won. He won the tournament in Saudi Arabia.
I think he has just enough McMahon in him to do crazy shit or anything for the business, but like not enough to do weird shit in his personal life that Vince did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think we're going to get into that when we talk to Doc.
As a human being, he is better than his father.
Yeah.
But he also definitely feels egotistical at times.
For sure. He's got that blood in him.
I mean,
he's got that blood in him.
But it feels like it wasn't there in the Attitude Era, and now it is there.
Yeah, well, that's what happens sometimes. That's what happens. Other things this week, Jey Uso is your Intercontinental Champion.
I was very surprised by that.
I was too. I was surprised by it too. I didn't think they'd do it.
I didn't have a thought that was going to happen at all. But then throughout the day, the promos and everything, they're building me up.
They really emphasized it.
And it reminded me of when Cody had the build up, and we were like, is he going to lose the belt when the dog came out and on the boss and all this stuff? It felt very similar, like building it up. Obviously, you knew they were in California, and then there was one false finish where I popped, and I was like, oh, shit. This might actually happen.
Yeah.
And that was with only a couple minutes left. So even till that point, I was like, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But it fucking happened and popped the shit out of me because I was not expecting it.
Me too. It's rare. It's rare to be caught off guard.
It was nice. It felt good to be caught off guard. And like I felt this weird like sensation with the crowd that I felt amongst them because I'm like, I'm just as surprised as all of you.
Right. Yeah.
Because the crowd popped in the same way of I don't think they expected it. Of course, they all wanted it, but I don't think anybody genuinely expected that. Right. And also, kudos to Joe fucking Tessitore. I think he had a great call on that. Yeah. Very memorable call.
And there was a video that was going viral of a little boy, I don't know, probably around 10 years old, reacting to Jey Uso getting the 3 count and, dropping to his knees, holding his hands like in his face, crying. He's so happy that again, a lot of wrestling, being on this side of it, being older, being, on the online communities, we get a lot of joy out of just being in the moment. We try our best to, but we obviously also look into predictions and understanding patterns and figuring out. And whereas, like, we forget that when kids are watching it, they're in this shit. Like, this is it. They're not on the fucking Reddit. They're not on, all the dirt sheets. They're in the moment. So that little guy is looking at Bron Breakker like, damn, like the Jays. How is he going to beat this guy? Then he gets a 3 count. Like, what? It spawns some memories of back in the day. What can you guys think of a match where you kind of had like the first time you had that reaction where somebody got the 3 count, either won a random match or won a belt, where you kind of reacted that way?
The boyhood dream.
Boyhood dream.
Yeah,
and like I feel like I have every moment of that 60+ minutes. Yeah, it was 60+, like just burned into my brain. And the reactions from him coming out, coming down to the crowd, dropping to both knees, holding the belt and crying. Like that's always the first moment I think of. And I was 6 going on 7 that year, so very formative age when you're really thinking about stuff and having your own opinions, and that one is just always the first one that comes to mind.
I feel like I remember when Mankind won.
Yeah.
When Austin comes out and he beats The Rock, like, was that a couple days after, a couple days before, or like a couple weeks before the Rumble?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember that.
This is the one Bischoff spoiled?
Yeah.
I remember.
And everybody went to that channel and said
it backfired. Everybody turned over, and that's what really started sparking a change up.
Yeah,
I really actually remember more the other end of it, like being like devastated by matches more than being like super happy by a win.
That's true. That makes sense.
Which now my personality checks out. That tracks.
Yeah, for me it was definitely the first time I remember like really getting like crazy hype, emotional, like hugging my brother. there was multiple, but the one that sticks out the most was Backlash 2000, I think it was, when Stone Cold comes back out of nowhere to save The Rock.
Yep.
Rock is, fighting Triple H for the belt. Triple H has the McMahons, and The Rock's being held up by, Gerald Briscoe and Pat Patterson, and they're going to town on him. All of a sudden, the glass shatters. Stone Cold comes out. Me and my brother, I was so hyped, dude. I almost jumped through the window. I almost broke some glass. That was the first time I remember getting, crazy, super, we were so hyped. We got my mom yelled at us what is going on? We were like, you have no idea. Mom Stone Cold just came back. Because I don't think he had been on TV for a while before that.
That was during his neck.
It was during his hiatus.
He got that Survivor Series would have been when he gets hit by the car.
Right, which was the year before. Yeah, the 99
Survivor Series. So I think that's probably the first time he's shown up since then.
Definitely anything physical. If they had shown him, it was never anything. And he came out, smacking people with chairs, referees, Patterson, Briscoe, McMahon, stunned Triple H, and then put Rock, on top of him for the pin. That shit was crazy hype. I popped for that. So I feel you, little dude.
Yeah.
Sometimes when your guy wins, it's overwhelming.
That's the thing.
That's what it's all about.
As much as we love it and we, love doing this pocket, that's who wrestling's for.
Yeah.
It's for kids.
But that kid is either gonna there's a decent chance that kid will grow up to be us in the sense of he can think back to that exactly. The same way we just thought of those moments. That's going to be the moment that comes back to him, and that's his formative thought process into wrestling. Whether he gives it up and never comes back to it as he grows and matures and ages. People always ask you that question, what's a fond memory from a kid? And for me, it's those moments, being in wrestling, being at a sporting event, being at something where you remember, oh my God, that was big. And it might have only been big to me, but it didn't matter because of how formative it was in my brain. It was the biggest thing in the world at the time. So that's what you remember. And like you said, it could be good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
But if it was memorable, it was memorable.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, 100%. So that was great. And, we'll see. I mean, how long is he going to keep it?
I'm very curious to see if this bounces back a little bit, what it looks like. I think this could be a great feud, and I would sign me up for this. Through Mania, honestly. I don't know, because I think, obviously, at some point, Jay's going to
I don't think it's going to make it through Mania,
No, I don't think it will necessarily either, but I would be all the way for it.
But we talked about this, towards the somewhat after Mania, where we were we're okay with very long title holders. Let's start getting some back and forth a little bit. That's fine. It doesn't remove. If anything, it elevates everybody. I think when you have it where any given match, the champion could possibly lose. Where for a time there, your IC champion, your WWE champion, they weren't losing shit for fucking 600 plus days, and then however many days, 2,000, 3,000. How many days was it for Roman? 1,300. Fucking, I'm way off. Samsonite. But
666 for Gunther.
Yeah,
Forget that one.
They did not plan that one.
They did not.
Or maybe they did. I don't know.
They had to have heard. They had to have not thought that through, and then they heard.
Well, remember it was
Michael Cole say,
leap year.
Right, I think that's the thing.
Leap year fucked them.
And then Michael Cole said that, and they were like, "Fuck,
shit.
we should have put this on Sunday."
Yep. So that kind of fucked them, but whatever.
My hope, though, is that they don't do the thing they've kind of been doing now, where the former champs just forgotten about.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Because that's the one negative I've had so far with the title changes is the champ's just gone for a while and they don't do anything.
You cannot do that to Braun right now.
Exactly.
No, hell no.
We even talked about Gable and Otis. Remember we were talking about Otis?
Right.
You don't fumble Otis. Don't fumble Otis. Don't fumble it. With all due respect to Otis, we're talking about Bron Breakker here. A little different.
Yeah.
You can't fumble Bron Breakker. You cannot. So
this
whatever
is a man
you do,
who could be the face of the company soon.
And we know he's not ready for anything elevated over IC, which that's fine because the IC is the workman's
which
belt.
Is okay.
That's what that's the mid-card belt you're supposed to build up. You can't put him in that title main event picture. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense. Yeah, it would be rushed. But you got to keep him hot. So he has to get the belt back eventually soon, be in something meaningful. If not, he's going to kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit. No fault of his own.
No.
And that would be that would be a huge fumble.
Yeah. I'm excited to see if they do have a little back and forth and what's next for them. Let the title go back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a nice little callback to the days of old when that used to actually happen.
Especially that belt. With the prestige.
That belt, it was like every other PLE, or at least, within a couple of months, you were seeing a new champion, a little program between maybe two superstars, maybe three mixed in there. I'm okay with that. Perfectly okay with that.
Also, this is now my call to go back to the old IC title.
Yes.
Yeah. Can we
1,000.
get rid of this piece of shit?
There's certain people who made this one look okay, some better than
none of
others.
them.
I know you didn't think so, but it's time to go back. Like, can we please? It doesn't have to be necessarily the white IC belt. It could be the black one. That's totally fine. But the early mid '90s IC belt. Can we please go back to it?
Yep.
I feel like Jey would look so much better in it. I thought Bron would have looked so much better in it too, especially looking at his father and uncle the same way. But like, please go back.
Yeah, this IC title's the worst. It's one of the worst designs. Up there with the penny belts. I think it's up there.
I wouldn't go that far.
It's bad. I hate it.
But I think like the old IC title is a top 3 belt of all time.
Oh, 100%.
So absolutely go back to that.
For me,
I
it's
think
the Winged Eagle and then that, and then I don't know what
every iteration of the IC title is a billion times better than the current one.
I definitely disagree with that, but I never cared for the Attitude Era.
I
I didn't
disagree.
like the oval.
I disagree heavy.
I didn't care for it as much.
I
For
loved
me,
it.
it's so hard. Like, and again, maybe it's because I'm such a Sean Mark or even a Razor Mark, a Mr. Perfect Mark. Like all those people who had it in those formative years was that belt, and it just looks so good. I think, again, Winged Eagle, that one, and then the mid '90s tag team belts was probably
or
those
even
are my
the
faves.
big world title was also awesome
I don't
too.
mind that one. I don't mind.
That's my favorite belt ever.
See, for me, it's the Winged Eagle is definitely my favorite belt of all time.
Yeah, Winged Eagle is probably number 3 for me. I like that the big gold. The big eagle,
Goldie.
The cookie.
Yeah, and then I
always did like Goldie.
I love big
especially on Goldberg.
Yeah,
I love Goldie.
Yeah, that belt felt
Flair.
so prestigious. Flair, even Hollywood walking around with it, man, spray painting that shit. That shit was cool as hell. I put those above that. I fuck with the old WCW tag team titles because they felt like
talked about the TV.
They felt like world tag team titles, TV titles.
The specific era though, because they also changed those and they looked worse. The WCW tag titles.
Yeah, no, the ones are like
Harlem Heat days.
I'm talking about like Harlem Heat, Outsiders, like early Outsiders. You know,
like the early days of Nitro. Ones.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Those were incredible. I also loved the NWA's US title. That was beautiful looking. The WCW one was alright too, but I thought the NWA one looked better.
So the doc reminded me when this was introduced, the blue. Did you like the blue, Mike?
Blue is my favorite part about.
All right, so you were.
Oh, the blue strap. The blue strap itself. It was blue for one day.
Yeah.
No, I prefer the black strap.
I agree.
Yeah, I prefer the black strap. I don't like.
That's the one I was talking about.
Okay, we have enough. Yeah, that's a beautiful belt.
Vibes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I also liked the WCW championship, heavyweight championship when Ron Simmons won it.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful one too. Before they went to the NWA, like all gold, right?
Yeah, because the one that's 93, 91. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that's when Flair leaves and he had possession of the old one.
Yeah.
And there was this thing where you had to put a deposit down for it, and he was like, "Well, they never gave me my deposit back. So I guess this is my belt now." So he just kept it and wore it.
Yeah,
on
that shit's
TV.
badass.
Yeah.
I just love me a splash of the blue globe in there, man. I think that's something that's missing, dude.
It also looks great on Raw.
Yeah, he looks great. He was a great looking champion.
I don't know if I saw speaking of belts, I saw the funniest joke because I've been thinking it, and this is the best way to say it, that Nia Jax is now rocking the snub nose women's title because of how fucking small that strap is.
I know.
Can we please resize that? Not only because Nia is just a big woman and fucking is physical and is a monster in her own way. Can we get a belt that fits her? But I also, in the same vein, Bianca and Jade need bigger belts.
Yeah.
Those just don't look good on them.
Yeah, but it makes them. But they low key probably like that. It makes them look big.
Right.
I get it.
You know what I mean? It was like when Andre would have the belt over his shoulder or Big Show.
For those 4.5 minutes that Andre held the title.
But it's still, when he had it, it just looked massive.
Right, yeah.
I think it just, I don't know. I think it just looks so weird.
I agree. Because it reminds me of when Nyla Rose won the AEW women's title, and that belt was so small and it looked like a toy on her.
Like you literally, I would love for the wrestler to be able to put the belt around their waist.
Exactly.
At some point, it would be nice.
Yeah, some never
There's
do
something
it.
about wearing it that way that just looks awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's true, but not.
I mean, nobody does it anymore, really, which is unfortunate. But there's just something about that look and the look of people in a suit, but then holding it.
Oh, yeah, that's Cody.
Not over the shoulder.
No, just like they have it folded like this.
Cody holds it, where it's folded perfectly. Yeah,
Cody's something about that look is just like, ooh,
not the way Tonga Loa held it up a couple weeks to the tag belt. He held up the side plate in the middle like a clown.
Yeah, he doesn't know what day it is. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Other big story of the week: SummerSlam 2025 for us Northeasters. MetLife Stadium. They finally figured out that stadium is not meant for WrestleMania.
Sorry, Minnesota.
Too fucking cold to
Yeah.
put WrestleMania at MetLife ever again. Don't do it.
Oh, and the thing's also a wind tunnel.
Yeah, and it's a wind tunnel. I've been to 2 WrestleManias there, and both times I was miserable. But SummerSlam I could fuck with.
Yeah, that's
Right.
gonna be dope.
I could do that.
That's
So
gonna be
2
dope.
nights,
Yep.
2025, first weekend of August. Right?
Tomorrow, move
Yeah.
it back up.
Hang on, you sent us when it was. I'll
Yeah.
check the date.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's cool. I think that's cool.
Yeah, August 2nd and August 3rd.
New York
Nice.
City, as much as I hate that city, I hate going to it.
Well, technically it's New Jersey.
Yeah.
I know the stadium itself, but all of the events will be in New York
Right.
City.
Yeah.
I do think it is a good hub for WWE events because they have, the Garden, they have Barclays, they have, sky is the limit when it comes to events there. Your typical bar crawls, your WrestleCons.
Love for them to do something in the Manhattan Center.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like,
that'd be
that would be
dope.
cool as
That'd be
hell.
cool.
Put an NXT show there. even.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
But your WWE, what do they call it now? FanFest.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're gonna have incredible options there, and I think that's
They'd like to use where the Islanders play.
the
a
Izod
ton.
Center. Oh, well, they used to use the Izod
was
Center.
it
Yeah,
USB Arena?
I forget what it used to be called. It had a way more catchy name, but I know they like to
Right.
use it for a lot of events. I think they just had a Fanatics Fest in that same place.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah.
Which WWE is heavily involved in. So
Well, I know
they're going to use up all the real estate.
I think AEW even recently ran a pay-per-view from there
Okay.
too. So
Yeah, it's gonna be. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
A summer
Oh, yeah.
because I've been to SummerSlam in Brooklyn. It is a good, and now that SummerSlam is even bigger than it was in 2015
nice.
when I went to see
Yeah.
it. When that was the same year as the Takeover Brooklyn.
right.
Damn,
what a show that was.
what a show that was. I wish I was in the city, didn't go to the show.
Almost wet, man.
That's the Sasha Bailey one, right?
Yeah, but I went to obviously SummerSlam, which was a fun one. That was
a good show, too.
Rollins too.
That's the one with Jon Stewart, right?
yeah, Jon Stewart, Undertaker, Brock, and the Hell in a Cell.
Yep. No, just the match. Because that's the one where the meme comes where they laugh at each other.
Yeah, where they sit up and laugh.
The Hell in a
So,
Cell
yes,
was
that
the
wasn't in
next
case.
month. They
Is
didn't
it?
do Hell in a Cell at SummerSlam.
Okay.
Or 2 months later. I don't remember when the Hell in a Cell was, but I know it wasn't. It was at Hell in a Cell.
Oh, it was at Hell in a Cell. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Well, regardless, I knew it was in that time frame. So yeah, I'm pumped for that, and
Yeah.
I know maybe that only means something to the people that live in the Northeast, but anytime you can get a major PLE like a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam, a Rumble, where it's drivable for us,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
take that all day.
And I think, again, just drivable for a lot of people, too. I think,
Yeah.
you can't underestimate the amount of fans in the Northeast, in the Mid-Atlantic, in that area. Like, you figure anything from Pennsylvania up to Maine can get there, down to D.C., Baltimore, Virginia area. Like, you can get there within a few hours. So I think it's
Right.
Canada. So I think it's a big hub for wrestling fans. It's also a destination. A lot of people are like, oh, if I'm going to go to an event, I want to go to an event in a big city like
Right.
New York, because I can also
Right.
make it a vacation and sightsee and yada, yada, yada. So I think it's going to be huge. And then coming off the heels of Mania in Vegas, I think it's going to be a huge event.
It's also,
Yeah.
like you said, the Northeast is home
Yeah,
to
it's
WWE.
home.
Yeah.
That's their home. Also, poor Minnesota, man.
I know.
So they're
Yeah.
getting it in 2026.
Six.
And if I remember correctly, the original deal when they signed it, it said that was going to be the first 2-night
First-
SummerSlam.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now they're like, no, not anymore.
Hey,
you guys now get the
pays to
second
keep
2-night
your mouth
SummerSlam.
shut, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is
But
that,
WWE
is that
was
what we're
the one
saying?
that promoted it
I
and
know.
said it was going to be the first 2-night SummerSlam, and then was like,
But do you
I'll
actually
scratch
feel
that.
bad for Minnesota?
I have family out there, so yes.
Okay, that's fair. I don't feel bad for Minnesota.
Yeah, I think from the outside looking in, it's like, well, again, money talks. It makes sense. If you're
Yeah.
going to do your first 2-night, no slight to you, Minnesota, but for it to be your first 2-night event, it makes sense you'd want to be in New York, New Jersey
absolutely.
for so many different reasons. So, yeah, they got the shit end of the stick for sure, but business-wise, yeah.
Yeah.
It just feels like if they're not getting it till 2026, hold off on announcing that.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
why,
100%.
why'd you announce it so
100%. They
soon?
definitely jumped the gun and absolutely, stuck their foot in their mouth in terms of sharing before
Right.
they should have. But then,
You think that
I
was some
get why.
fan service to Minnesota for slighting them on WrestleMania?
yeah.
I mean, possibly.
Like
But even
saying,
then,
hey, you're
don't-
not getting WrestleMania 2025. We're going to Vegas. Much cooler. But also, you're getting SummerSlam in 2026. That's cool.
But also, here's the other crazy thing, though. Then they signed that Indianapolis deal where they're getting 3 shows and
Yeah.
they're getting a Mania.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like of the 2
3 PLEs,
cities,
right?
I'd probably rather go to Minnesota than Indianapolis.
I've heard Indy's actually pretty cool.
I feel like I've heard around the stadium is very nice, but then outside of that, it's like
sucks. Yeah,
nothing.
Yeah, same. I don't know much about either. I had a buddy who was in Minnesota for a little bit, but like, yeah, I've heard good things about Minnesota. Good things about Indy. Only really hearing about like the combine.
Exactly right. Or that time they hosted the Super Bowl.
But yeah, I think they're comparable. But yeah, I think Minnesota. Honestly, it was just like kind of luck of the draw and timing wise. Like it just didn't work out in their favor that they weren't the biggest city to have this event.
I just think my thing is like maybe just don't announce it as the first 2-night WrestleMania. Just announce it as a 2-night WrestleMania. Yep.
They probably forgot they did that.
They probably did. Honestly, you're probably right.
You know, they probably just like, oh fuck.
Knowing the track record of how things work there, they probably did forget that they said that was going to be the first.
Yep. And said, fuck it, more people are going to be happy about this than upset about this. So.
Well, if you came here for the Vince McMahon docuseries reaction, you've made it 40 minutes. All right, so we're gonna get into it now. It was okay. You know what? Before I give my opinion on it, Mr. McMahon is out 6 episodes on Netflix. We've been talking about it, previewing it. We got very hyped for it. We built up this expectation that it was going to be something that we have never seen before. Now, with that being said, Kayfabe Cousins, I turn to you. I'll start with you. Flanabam, was the doc what you expected?
No, it felt more hype than delivery. More sizzle than steak, if you will.
Okay.
Like, it felt like, oh, this is going to be something insane. And then it was like, I don't know, I kind of know. I mean, there was some stuff said that I was like, oh, fuck. Like, in the very first episode, Linda McMahon says, when Vince and I first met, he was 16. I was 13.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? Here's the thing. A 3-year age difference isn't that much, but 13 to 16 is a fucking huge
And
gap.
if 13 to 16 doesn't jump out to you, just think of 18 and 15.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
when they were married.
Right.
And well, he said he got married when he was 17, didn't he not? Or maybe she was 17.
She was 17.
She was 17.
Okay.
She was 20. Okay, yeah. Because it wouldn't even be legal, yeah.
Right.
It's not 1820. I don't know.
I don't know how far you guys got to, but it's also funny that later on, Vince retells that story, but all he says was, I was 16 when we met.
Yes, he did.
Conveniently leaves out how old she was.
Yeah. I noticed that.
Sensing a trend.
Yeah. And then in the second episode, these were Vince's words himself. They're talking about the Rita Chatterton rape.
I have this quote written down.
And he says, I remember this verbatim because it was fucking just burned into my brain. He says, wait, now I just lost it for a second.
I got it.
Wait, no, okay. He goes, it was a consensual relationship. Even if it was rape, though, the statute of limitations were up.
Anyway.
Don't fucking say that, bro.
I had to pause.
Yeah.
I literally paused and was like, did I hear that? I got to rewind and make sure I heard that.
Like,
and with the straightest, most just non-committal, nonchalant face
just
of
like, even if I raped her, she can't do anything about it now.
Yeah.
Like, the fuck, dude?
Yeah. That was the shit that I can understand why he wanted to pay Netflix to not release it.
Yeah.
Because he was probably like, ooh.
In one of the moments, I think similar to you, that was one of the moments I probably didn't know or didn't realize. 94% of this doc, stuff we all knew, stuff we heard, stuff we were well aware of. More context, more stories from different people,
Barely,
et cetera. But other than that, I didn't really learn much.
No.
So, I want to, I guess, take that with a grain of salt because I'm trying to take a step back and think of the average individual.
So that's...
who's not, and I think that's probably the quote you're thinking about Bill Simmons, like the average individual who doesn't know a fucking thing about Vince McMahon and tuned in. And I will say the one thing that jumped out to me, and I wrote it down, the first 5 minutes hooked the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Hooked the shit out of me as a huge wrestling fan. So imagine someone who didn't know anything, heard that first 5 minutes, they're locked in, like a Tiger King, like one of those shows. So that's where I'm like, okay, I get it. If that's all they were trying to accomplish, then they hook you in. From a documentary standpoint, I know this wasn't WWE. This was Netflix and Bill Simmons and his crew. From a quality standpoint, probably one of the few places who can produce a better-looking documentary in WWE, and they did that. Everything looked official, looked great, looked better than even the content was that they were giving us. Like, again, more sizzle than steak, more shine than, everything that glitters isn't gold.
Exactly.
But that's how it felt, but with that quote, and I wrote that, I was just like, this fucking guy.
Yeah.
And the way, and I wrote down a bunch of those quotes. I got 6 pages of notes of just random one-liners from, like, Vince and other people. Where I'm like, what the fuck?
The last episode and a half were to me the most interesting.
Yeah.
Like have you guys both seen episode 5?
Yes,
I completed it.
So the story Paul Heyman tells at the end of the meeting with
Shane,
Shane and Vince, I'm like, oh shit, they are real life
and
succession.
they gave that trailer, and I remember hearing that, and that was one of the things where I'm like, whoa, if we're getting 6 hours of this, sign me up.
That
was one of the few stories I don't think any of us heard.
That's what we were expecting. But again, when you come back to expectations, right? we have to then take off our smart hats and be like, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
Now, okay, we overthought this.
Right.
This is supposed to be what it was intended to be. And I go back to a previous episode where I said this was going to be Netflix's way of separating themselves from Vince McMahon. Initially, this documentary was supposed to be introducing you to the world of WWE, which obviously cannot be told without understanding Vince McMahon.
Right.
Saying, hey, yes, WWE has this past, they have this history, they have these misogynistic, race, whatever you want to call it, all this crazy ass shit that was given to us as a consumer, as entertainment. Yes, all of that existed. Yes, they have progressed. Yes, they're well aware that things that they did in the 80s and the 90s wouldn't fly in 2024, and they've changed, and this is how they've done it. That's what I think it was initially set out to be. Mm-hmm. And then the lawsuits happen, and then Vince steps down, and then they can't talk to him again after that. So what does it become?
So I get the feeling that the first 5.5 episodes are what the documentary was originally going to be. And then the second half, episode 6, is kind of they added on stuff.
And I literally wrote it down. It was at the 28-minute mark of episode 6 where you first heard the word scandal.
Right. Yeah.
The first time. So we're 5.5 hours in, and we didn't hear the name Janelle Grant until 13 minutes left in the entire
We read it a bunch of times. Like, these interviews
and
happened
honestly,
before the Janelle Grant lawsuit.
You pointed this out in our text thread that the preview of episode 6 at the end of episode 5 was better than anything they gave us in episode 6.
Yeah.
They
that
didn't
made it
dive
look like it was going to be so juicy.
In the thing, and I guess why I was, and again, I think I did this to myself. Like, just as a wrestling fan, excited, like, oh my God, this is gonna. And you heard the Conrads, the Bischoffs, the Bully Rays, all of the people, like, no, this is gonna be some groundbreaking shit. This is gonna be X, Y, and Z. And I think even they were a little, I don't want to say bamboozled about what we really were going to get, because especially for folks like that who've heard it all, none of this was much surprising.
It was weird to hear Pritchard's quote in the second half of episode when they
6,
brought him back.
When they were like, hey, did you see any of these episodes?
Like, I thought it sucked.
So defensive. Yeah, 100%. And, like, I get it. And I'm glad he gave the story he did of, yes, well, if they know my relationship, my wife had cancer, and he made sure she got the best care ever, and she had 4 years to live, and she's been living for 24 years. No offense. But if somebody did that for me, my viewpoint of them is going to be skewed 100%. For the rest of my life.
Right. He changed all of their lives.
Also,
all of that. Another point at the end where they asked all the wrestlers, what is his legacy? Right. Hogan, Trish, Booker, they had to sit and wait so long. It's like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what it is. Like, and I think that was because, and this was pre any of the Janelle Grant. This was when they interviewed them in 2021. So before all of the big
this was out front
media
like
scandals, the original
NDA
stuff. Like 12 million to 4 different people. Right. Before all of that, they couldn't make the decision. And I think even for me as someone, again, in all of us, this wasn't new. That was like, damn. A lot of them obviously knew where the bodies were buried all the way, but before the big stuff came out, they already couldn't come out and really like cape for him in that way. Like that's pretty telling.
Right. I will give Bruce the benefit of the doubt. 3 years is a long time, but I also found it very funny that he came out as defensive as he did. But there's also a quote of him in an earlier episode of like, what's the difference between the Mr. McMahon character and Vince himself?
Yes.
No, they're the same person.
Oh, no, the best was when Vince was like, they're different.
They're totally
two separate people. And everybody was like, I don't think anything. Hogan, Undertaker, Bruce,
Cena,
everybody. So, I don't know if you got to the episode yet. It may have been the last one. Vince himself is like,
the closing
I can't tell who's who anymore.
And like, this won't be a spoiler, but the closing scene is literally him giving, and he's like, well, no, they're two different. And in the midst of his response, he goes from completely different. Actually, oh no, they are kind of the same, and one of them is turned up, but I can't tell you which one.
Right.
So like at the end, him very telling again in his own Vince McMahon kind of snarky, kind of sly grin, kind of now also trying to be not as demonstrative and talk as lower. Like it's just you could see what he was trying to do, but it just didn't hit, man.
It's so funny.
It would just the real him would come out without him even being able to control it.
It's like Rick James in this Chappelle Show episode where it's like, I don't just go be walking in people's couches and stomping on the couch. I got a little bit more sense than that.
Of course, I put my feet on his couch.
Yeah, I remember stomping on Eddie's couch. That's literally Vince McMahon.
That's 100% what
Vince McMahon and Mr. McMahon are two different people. Maybe the same. They're the same person, actually. What am I talking about?
I can't tell the difference anymore. Also,
and there was another one too that I noticed that was big for me, where he was saying something. They were talking about having an affair with Sable. And Vince was like, an affair with Sable. And then Heyman, you hear Heyman's voice in back. He goes, no, storyline.
In the background of his interview.
Was every Vince interview sat in with Heyman, and God knows what other inner circle is sitting right there? Like, you kind of figure that might be happening, but for him to be there in that air, it's like, fuck, well, damn, these guys are literally babysitting him.
I think the original documentary Vince himself was going to produce, and I think Heyman was probably part of the production staff, so that's probably why he was there for the interview.
Yeah, right.
But then the fact that he's like, Sable sued us? Nah, I don't
remember any of that, and it was this whole storyline.
Right. It was a big fucking deal.
Involving staff,
it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
It was you sued them for $110 million.
Yeah.
That's where I get like, okay, a lot of criticism over the product the last 10 years was always Vince is out of touch, Vince is losing his mind. When you watch that interview, there's still a lot of how he speaks. It's very sharp, right? Yeah. Whether you agree with what he's saying or not. Yeah. But then you have moments like that where it's like, wait a minute, is he fucking with us? Yeah. Is that kayfabe? Like, is he saying, like, is he genuinely not remember Sable suing him and the storyline of her coming back? And that part kind of fucked with me because I'm like, wait, does he just not remember that? Well, that's a big thing.
I had the same thoughts, and I guess I was giving him a benefit of the doubt or too much, but I'm like, he's fucking old.
Yeah,
as shit, and his brains have also been scrambled. And not excusing him, but I'm like, he kind of just rambles like an old man who kind of doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about sometimes.
Here's why I think he does remember the Sable thing, but he just is trying to act like he
trying to pretend like he doesn't.
He remembered the match he had with Stephanie McMahon. That match was built around the Sable storyline.
Yes.
So like, there's no way he'd remember that, but doesn't fucking remember the story that led up to it.
But
he remembers weird details about the Trish storyline, but he doesn't remember the one that happened 2 years later.
He remembered every detail of
he did the exact same thing with Sable.
That's true. That's true.
And he remembered all of the Steph one about impregnating her.
Right.
She didn't want to talk about. He had every detail ready, like smiling ear to ear as he's serving it up. Like, even the couple times, there's another thing that stuck out to me. I don't know if it was episode 6, but he was talking about having 2 brains that he thinks from. And he was just like, I have 2 different brains, and one of them thinks this way, and one of them thinks that way. And then sometimes I have a third brain. And then he finishes, and then the producer's like, what is that third brain thinking about? He goes, it's thinking about sex.
Yeah.
It's just like, this fucking guy.
Yeah.
Like, there was a few moments like that where he just went back to...
So maybe that's what's not helping. Maybe, when you're trying to piece it together, obviously knowing leading up to Wednesday, the release of the doc, the statement made by Vince McMahon, which is lengthy. We're not going to get into it. Right. If you're a wrestling fan, you're watching this, you've seen it, you've read it.
Basically, he also changed PR firms.
What was that?
Yep. Vince also changed PR firms right before it dropped.
Day before.
So that statement comes out essentially saying, like, hey, you're getting one side of the story. You're getting editing magic. They're making it seem like I said this way. This, person in the interview said it this way. And then you have him just kind of like saying, and then the rumors come out that he was willing to pay a ton of money to Netflix to have the documentary not come out and all this stuff. And then, so obviously...
Had Ari Emanuel call himself trying to do it, which that even fucked me up because I didn't know that their relationship was of that, where Vince can call him and say, hey, call Netflix and get this back from him.
Especially, like, now.
Yeah. I also didn't realize that Oprah apparently did the same thing recently with Apple. They were doing a documentary on her. She did not like the way it came out. She bought it back and suppressed it. So I forgot where I saw it, but they were like, maybe that's where Vince got the idea.
Probably. I think Vince gets a lot of his ideas from Oprah. Or as her actual name is Orpah. Fun fact. Oprah's real name is Orpah.
Orpah?
Orpah.
Orpah.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if it was like the 80s and like the show was supposed to be called the Orpah Winfrey Show, but there was a typo on like the side. They're like, it's going to take us 3 weeks to make a new one. Can you just be Oprah for now?
Fuck this shit. You're Oprah.
Right.
She lives the gimmick, brother.
She's like, all right, well, I'm Oprah.
She worked herself into a shoot.
She got Oprah money. She don't give a fuck.
That's not like confirmed. That's just a fun theory I have.
So yeah, I went into it watching this docuseries thinking like, okay, where is it going to get to the point where I can see why Vince didn't want this to get out? The statement we made earlier about the rape comment that he made, which is just fucking asinine.
Nuts. He met Linda when she was 13.
Yeah.
Also, Linda, kind of like, and I mean this in a sense. I don't know how to say this with kind of a G, but like not always in the best way. But I'm saying in the sense that like. She comes off as this, obviously knowing that she stayed with Vince throughout all this time. She was very much involved in the business side of WWE, but also had her political side. Also just looks like your typical Karen, like, not super salacious. Probably did things on TV that she didn't want to do just to appease.
She said that in the doc. Yeah.
But she also like in the doc like was kind of sitting back like, yeah, we did this and I did this and I was okay with this and I was kind of like, okay, I didn't expect that.
I didn't expect it either.
I didn't expect her to be a part of it.
Yeah,
no,
to be honest,
I didn't think she was because again, when this was so public, and it's weird in that sense of like she was in it. Shane, Stephanie, never at one point was there anything in the doc about him like cheating on her and him just
they're kind of
a little bit, but like
they were like.
They very quickly glossed over it. Yeah,
like they never talked about her.
Yeah, they never were like, yes, we had to have you like
the Playboy interview, which he claimed he didn't remember either.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about that one in a minute. But
right?
Like,
Didn't he made like a.
No, I think he remembered it, but he was like, I don't have any regrets.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
But no, I think he in that really because I'm like none of them, not Stephanie, not Shane, not even Linda, like very clearly came out and said yes, like my dad was wrong for cheating on mom or anything of that sort.
They're just
and I
weird
think it just
people, man.
Sums that family up.
They're just fucking
that family
weird,
is just,
dude.
In the doc, they show a clip of Triple H cutting a promo, and he's like, I married into the weirdest fucking family in the world. And it's like, yeah, you did.
Right.
Like none of it makes sense of how they're all so comfortable. And maybe Linda at this point is like, you know what? I can't look any worse than this fucking guy.
Yeah.
So like, I'm just gonna show up and look rosy because I look that way.
I'm paraphrasing. I don't know. I don't remember the exact quote, but I just laughed at HBK, one of his comments where he's like, at the end of the day, like what we do is weird. Like this is weird.
Right.
This is weird stuff.
He was talking about stuffing his.
That's what it was.
Putting the gauze in.
He's like, they're like, you're taking it too far. Something that he's like,
Vince was away.
At the end of the day, like we're weird.
Yeah, like lean into it. And it worked. Like they fucking loved it.
Exactly.
And of course, Vince was like, okay, it's good shit.
Yeah, it's good shit.
Run with it.
Although I gotta say, he was great in the documentary, but like Tony Atlas,
yes,
what?
But that's his role. Like,
absolutely.
It's so fucking like
he was so good. But
I'm surprised he was even.
That's my thing.
Like from a Vince standpoint,
why is it Tony Atlas?
He's been a big Vince detractor in the past, like way more than he was in this doc.
Right.
Can we look at it from a morbid standpoint? Who from the 80s do they have left to really represent that time?
Especially someone like him who will say some shit.
You know what I mean?
Way more complimentary of Vince than I thought.
Oh, definitely.
He was in 2021.
Yeah.
So there were a few more still at that point.
But I feel like even go back to like Legends House and stuff like that. I feel like he was very. Spoke up a lot about, like, especially from a black man standpoint, a black performer standpoint. He said a lot.
Again, I thought he was great. He was just very unexpected.
He's so I thought he was hilarious because he doesn't hold anything back.
In this documentary, I might,
Yeah, there were some folks. I thought we were going to hear a lot more from The Rock. Honestly.
Yeah, he was barely in it.
Like he was in that episode.
I'm actually happy though.
But I was surprised being how much we've seen him and knowing when this last episode or so came together. I thought we were going to see way more of him.
No, I'm okay with how much we saw him.
That we saw less of him than Cena and so many other folks.
Austin was in it more.
Obviously, fucking Hogan lived in especially those first few episodes.
I've said it many times. He's my second favorite wrestler of all time. But goddamn, Bret Hart is egotistical.
Oh my god,
dude, he was the worst. Okay, listen.
So many moments.
I'm sorry.
So many. I remember when he called himself an artist, and I was
like, "Oh my god, dude! I thought it was. I thought it was
like
trolled.
The best thing he said on it
and
too.
I'm like, I can call you that, but it's weird for him to say.
Saying he thought they may have murdered Owen to get back at me.
Yeah, I know.
Like what the fuck?
And it wasn't until the cop called
and
it was like, it didn't happen.
I forget it verbatim, but something along the lines of like. Hogan left, and they needed somebody to pull the sword out of the stone, and of course, that guy just happened to be Bret Hart.
Happened to be Bret
Fuck
Hart.
off, Bret.
I know.
I love you as a wrestler, but fuck off, man.
He doesn't do himself
Bret Hart.
No.
Okay.
Sadly, and we all know this isn't true. Hogan probably came across more likable than him.
100%. Like, and that's Hogan's issue. Is he always?
I know.
Not always. Definitely not always.
Not always.
But Hogan
knows how to turn the Hogan charm on. He does. He fucking does.
Bret Hart has no charisma.
You can see the shit he's saying, but.
Phenomenal wrestler, but no charisma. And it came across in spades in this documentary.
Sadly, Owen had all the charisma in my family.
I had to. What I had to do with Bret Hart in this docuseries is, take my hat off, put his on. Screwjob, Owen, Goldberg ending my career allegedly.
I mean, he did.
I would probably carry a lot of bitterness with me.
Yes.
But the thing is that I would hope by the time I'm his age and the time is running out.
Nobody's forcing you to talk about this shit.
Dude, like, hearing him talk about himself hearing him, it was brutal. Honestly, I was like, get this guy off my fucking TV. Like, you look at him, you look at HBK. HBK has openly admitted of how much of a tyrant.
Both of them.
Yes.
How much of a tyrant he was. He admits that he was
in
a piece
the
of
doc
shit.
a bunch of times.
He talked about we shouldn't have been doing this, but like, dude, yeah, we did. It was fucking great for the time. I've changed, and now I've made something of my life. You don't think that the NXT or WWE would benefit from having somebody like Bret Hart involved?
Absolutely.
If he wasn't a bitter asshole? Like, move on, dude. Like, it's easy for us to say, obviously.
Well, and also,
but it's like it comes off. It like ruins a lot of my image of him.
My thing isn't even his bitterness in this documentary. It's literally the thing. Like, to say that they buried Owen to get back at him.
Yeah, it's insane.
You were gone for like 2 years almost at that point.
Owen was doing some fun ass shit at that point too. Like some fun ass shit with all the Slammies and the tag teams he was a part of. Like, it was some fun shit for a while. Like, obviously. Say what you want about Vince deciding to keep the show going, and even he talks about it, he goes, if that was me, I would have kept the show going.
Yeah.
Like, you can feel as fucked up as you want about that. There's no fucking person who wanted that to happen.
No.
There's nobody who wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
There's nobody who would have plotted that, been behind that, allowed that. No. No.
Yeah, that doesn't get any easier anytime I watch the.
No.
Yeah, it's still sad. Just seeing, and I remember watching that pay-per-view as a kid. That was one I remember watching live.
I didn't watch it live.
I remember because I vividly remember seeing King's face, because JR, obviously being the babyface commentator, but JR, especially at that, I mean, Lawler, especially at that time, nothing was ever serious. He never took anything serious.
Right.
And seeing his face when he sat back down, you knew something was right. And even the fans behind the camera, I noticed it again on the shot in the doc, were kind of like waving, like nothing good is happening.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely not. It's never easy to rewatch recapping what happened at Over the Edge '99 and with Owen Hart. That was tough, but it's all things that we've seen before. And I think what it comes back to is this docuseries was intended to be for a new audience. Yeah. It was intended to be like, hey, you're going to learn the history of WWE and Vince McMahon, the guy who I still think it was a part of this coming out that they wanted to separate from. But initially it was like, hey, understand where he comes from. Understand that this shit that was happening in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s that was fucking disgusting.
In his childhood.
In his, going back to the 60s and 70s. The dude was molested. The dude was beaten every day by his stepdad. His incestual shit happening in his family. And he didn't even meet his father until he was 12 years old.
That was one thing, and I think we all kind of known parts of that. But it's really nice to hear Vince talk about that.
Right.
Yeah.
It
wasn't often that Vince would say that. It would be Bruce Pritchard or somebody else, Pat Patterson, saying it. To hear him talk about it was really, really cool. The first interaction, he ran up to him so excited, and Dad just like patted him on the back. Didn't even do anything else, which was such good storytelling and foreshadowing when you get to, I think, episodes 5 or 6 when you talk about Shane. Yeah. And after WrestleMania 32, he came back and he got the hug and he got the pat on the back and the I love you and I'm proud of you. You can see in Shane's face, that's all he ever wanted his whole life. He said it. What he thought he was going to get out of the company didn't happen, and it really was the exact same thing that happened between Vince and his dad, having to buy the company, having to force him out. So that was interesting. I'm glad they talked about his dad, his stepfather beating him and his upbringing, being dirt poor in a trailer park. Like, I think that you can feel how you want about Vince, and I think we talked about it a little bit before. It's not excusing the behavior; it's just kind of defining the behavior, and giving you the reasons why. Right. It doesn't mean it's okay.
It's what we talked about with Aaron Hernandez. Same shit.
Like, this is what led to it, and you can see how this can lead to that. And the part that they glossed over really quickly, and I assume it was his mom. They showed in that like red, white, and blue covered wheelchairs. They talked about the Playboy interview, where it mentions like that he might have been molested by the woman in his house who was his mother, and that was one that in the doc they glossed over in 5 seconds.
Yeah,
like they talked about the interview, but they mentioned it as the mom was on screen. Somebody might have been Shoemaker who was like, they even mentioned some sexual relationship with the woman in the house who was his mom, and then boom, right off of it.
Yeah. It was mostly talked about when they talked about the Playboy was the affair thing.
Yes, the affair. Which even that, like his quotes in there are rough.
Yeah.
It's disturbing. I mean, the dude, he is of a time.
Yeah.
That I hope, I know, as society is what it is, it's not ever going to be perfect, but I would hope that we are in a time where there's a lot less of things like that happening. But dude, the guy's 80 years old, like he's an old dude. He grew up in a completely different time, and you add in, sexual abuse, physical abuse, incest. How do you learn? How do you even respect women? How do you respect your elders? How do you respect yourself if for the first 12 years of your life you're being abused in the worst ways, and living and growing up poor, where your father doesn't even want to be in your life for 12 years. And he even said himself, he doesn't even know why.
Never told him why.
He never even told him why. Like, imagine that. Like, the dude finally came into his life and then lived, he knew him for however many years after that. He passed away young at 69. And never found out why you weren't in my life for the first 12 years. And he's in his 80s now and probably will never know.
Right. And even he said, I don't know if he said it was the first time he said I love you was the day before he passed.
The day before he died.
So, like, again, it's very similar to Shane. Like, obviously, Vince is still with us, but it was so, I guess, prophetic to me how that just mirrored one another, from Vince Sr. to Vince Jr. to Shane, and that kind of difference. And then how, in a lot of ways, Shane, and I think we talked a little bit about it off air, about how Shane he's so much McMahon, but he's also so much not. In the doc, they talk about the match with him and his dad and Trish and Linda and Steph, and how they embrace at the end, and he's so much, I don't say more his mom, but he's so much his mom as much as his dad, whereas Stephanie is so much dad.
So much Vince.
And so much Vince. And I think Heyman, a couple people said it, like Shane was never going to get the business. It was always going to be Steph because she's built for it in a way that Shane isn't. And you could tell that kind of, Shane felt that.
Yeah.
And that had an impact on him being gone for 7 years, and that pop being so big when he came back. But just that kind of it's so interesting, especially Steph being a woman in the middle of all this, how young she was when they just threw her to the wolves in the business. Like, I think
embraced it though, man.
Oh yeah,
she did, and ran with it, and was so good at it.
Yeah.
Like, she's so good at it because she's her father's kid.
Yeah, you forget, or it's a funny reminder seeing early Steph in WWE when thinking about where she became the leader, self-proclaimed leader of the women's revolution or evolution or whatever we call it.
To be fair, though, a lot of even the women were like, she was a big
Yeah.
supporter.
No,
of ours.
I'm not.
She invented women's wrestling.
Right.
That's the joke.
Right. That when the authority was being the authority, that's kind of the time. But like, it's just funny to think about but I love Trish in this doc. I love how she was just like, I don't regret that. Is she the audience?
Right.
Shit, she knew her part. And you know what? Would they be able to do that today? And should they do that today? Absolutely not, because it still paints a bad image of how a man should be treating a woman, and it's degrading and all that stuff. But at the time, that's a very key part here. At that time, clearly it was okay with television. It was okay with the people in the crowd. People were eating it up, and that's always the excuse, is like, well, they were fucking eating that shit up. Triple H had a great comment, sorry, and I'll let you get to a Flanabam, where he says, like, I don't know who's worse, the people who create it or the people watching it. I'm paraphrasing there, but it's like, who, because they're watching it, so who's worse here?
That's my thing. To your point, the one thing Vince said that I kind of agreed with him on is, like, you can't judge the past by today's standards.
100%.
The past was different.
Good luck telling society that.
That's why we got to where we are now, because shit was like that back then. That's how societies move forward. You can't shit on back then because it's not like now. I hope
that we're beginning to understand that more as a society, because obviously for a good 5, 6 years, 7 years now, we've gotten to the point where, like, if you did one bad thing in your life, it's who you are as a person, right? According to society, which I just don't believe that.
No, people change.
I think we've seen enough from Vince to know the type of person
he's not going to change.
Which doesn't make it right.
And there's a sliding scale of what is easily forgived or what can fairly easily be understood and moved on from. And then there's certain things that's either going to take a while or it's just never going to happen for at least a certain segment of the population. They're never going to be able to arrive at that point, but it is a scale.
Perfect example of that. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt because it was 3 years ago, and hopefully they've changed their opinions. But there were some comments in the last episode people made about concussions that you're like, like, don't be like that.
Stone Cold,
Undertaker, Stone Cold would really jump out the window.
CTE. Come on, dude. Don't be that way.
That's some shit that's some carny shit. Yeah. That's when you're just like, okay, really? Like,
Austin, talk to your good friend Mick Foley and ask him if CTE is a thing.
Certainly these last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
No, I thought that was interesting. And that was even one of, I guess, the more redeeming things that Vince did was bringing in Chris Nowitzki, bringing him back in and saying, you know what, okay. And I know it looked a little different, but like, okay, come in, educate us. We're going to ban certain things. We're going to do certain things different. Like, at least that was one thing he was, I guess, I don't want to say ahead of, but was at least understanding.
However, that was completely undone when he told his Undertaker story about WrestleMania.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Then you're like, that one down fuck too. Off.
Yeah. Taker's like, I don't remember anything. He's like, I don't remember it that way.
It was a traumatic event for the Undertaker.
Just wanted to forget it.
Bro, you fucking went to the hospital with him.
Yeah.
You know he had a concussion.
Taker's like, he was at the hospital with my family. Yeah.
It's where, sometimes you don't know if he's if he's working us or not.
He might fucking
That's the
have
thing.
CTE, right?
He probably has
does.
CTE, man. Years
He took
of
a lot of them
steroids.
chair
The
shots,
chair
the
shots he took.
steroids.
He took a ton of chair shots.
He's probably got CTE.
Yeah,
he probably fucking does.
Yeah.
I did not like that from Stone Cold. I know the joke was Stone Cold thinks that CTE is Santa. I saw that everywhere, where he doesn't believe in it.
He said that in 2021.
Yeah.
So it's possible that in the 3 years he's changed his opinion. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Hopefully he
And
feels
same for
differently
Taker.
now.
You would hope Taker would have a little bit, especially since what he went through.
Yes.
Like he literally went multiple times. He's been dumped on his head and been worse of the wear for it.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about his comments of, I was pissed when they took away chair shots to the head.
Yeah,
Dude,
this is real. This is what
I'm
we
old
do.
school. That's not old school. That's fucking stupid.
Yeah, that's just breaking. I think protected chair shots are still a part of wrestling.
Yep.
There's a time and a place for it. It shouldn't be every week, but unprotected, taking it straight to the back of your skull or to the front of your skull is just stupid. It's not necessary. Honestly, I can't even watch old clips where they're doing that. I mean, some of them were so bad.
Yeah, we talked Rock and McFoley last week. I always think of Shamrock. There's so many.
Shamrock,
WrestleMania.
we talked about that recently with Van Vliet, where he was like, I told him to hit me in the face.
Yeah.
He's like, I actually liked getting hit in the face. Well, he's a psychopath.
So many.
I think of the Stevie Richards JBL one.
Yes.
Where he fucking lays him out.
Jeff
Granted,
Hardy
with
and Brock
receipt,
Lesnar.
Yeah.
Also, the chairs
Holy
are.
fuck.
I think chairs are a lot different now. Like the structure of the chairs.
Right.
Back then, you could tell those were just the regular steel folding chairs you can go buy anywhere. That were fucking hard. Like now, the chairs are a little more rigged and ready. As with much of the stuff, like some of the stuff Shane was jumping through was really just plywood, and nothing else. Whereas now it's a lot more sophisticated. In terms
they touched on the Kurt Angle spots.
Yes.
That
Oh my god. The
didn't work.
glass.
Oh my God.
The sound of him.
Yeah.
I forgot how
you could literally hear
big
the
that thud
thud.
was,
Yeah.
and it was just the grated concrete.
Yeah.
It was just.
That was another big pop for me moment. That was King of Ring 2001.
Yep.
When The Rock ended up winning. I think Undertaker helped him, if I remember correctly. I think Undertaker was like, you owe me one, you son of a bitch. If I'm trying to remember King of the Ring 2001.
That was a good one. The other spot, too, I really enjoyed was The Rock and Hogan talking about 17. That
was cool.
Even good words
18.
like them. 18, sorry. Like that moment was perfect. And Rock was like on the fly. I had to realize I'm only here because Hogan's here, and the fans were telling me that, and then we had to lean into it. Like, I guess it was nice to hear both of them expound on that and not fucking just blow smoke up each other's asses or their own asses.
Although it did feel like Hogan was going to be like, I told him he's got to work heel.
Yeah,
I was going to be like, I don't believe you, Hogan. I don't believe you told The Rock that. I think The Rock, especially at that point in time, knew well enough to be like, I got to be the heel now.
Yep. Now even just
King of the Ring 2000
slamming Andre for the first time when
Right.
it's like the 100th time. And
Right. Oh, you meant when The Rock won King of the Ring?
King of the Ring 2000 is what we're thinking of.
Yeah.
That was
Because Edge won the King of the Ring in 01.
The Rock and the Brothers of Destruction defeated the McMahon Helmsley faction. So what year was it that Shane fought?
That was 01.
Was it 01?
Yeah. Shane and Angle was 01.
I'm all over the map. Oh yeah, that's right, because The Rock retained the 6-man tag. It was a 6-man tag for the WWF Championship somehow, and The Rock retained because Undertaker helped him. And I remember Undertaker was walking away. He's like, "You owe me one, you son of a bitch." Anyways, that was just sidebar there.
I don't think new to any of us, but like hearing Taker talk more about the streak, I found out day off.
Yeah.
Like, day of this was happening. Like, we're gonna put Lesnar.
It's all
over.
just it was cool to see it all in one place. I guess it'll be cool to have it living in one spot, but overall, meh.
Right. Yeah, I would say
meh.
it's hard for me to say. And again, I keep trying to go back and say like this wasn't for me necessarily. This wasn't set up for me. This wasn't for him. But I guess I just got my hopes up so much.
Right.
And I guess I also bought into like some of the WWE is gonna make sure it gets buried here. Like if this is they're gonna go like scorched earth, no stone unturned, etc. And it didn't feel like that. And honestly, like even at the end, some of the way they summarize, I'm like they're kind of like propping this guy up a little bit. Like this is not kick him while he's down type of like. It was just a lot left unsaid or even just said in the last like credits of just the white. How they would always talk about this lawsuit was closed here and was settled here. So every lawsuit was settled. It's just like. It was a lot. Even some of the stuff like the Richard Belzer fucking getting choked out, cracking his head open. Like I remember I was watching that part with my wife, and she was like, "What the fuck? Like, did you see all the blood?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "This was some of the shit that was happening." Like the Dave Schultz backstage thing. I remember, Dark Side of the Ring really went in on that.
Yeah.
But how they were like, even Teddy Atlas was like, "No, Vince wanted that. Like, he might not have said it, but he came back and said it in so many words. Like, somebody
like, "Oh man, I really wish somebody would teach that reporter a lesson."
So much of that, I think episode 1 I really enjoyed just hearing that backstory, even hearing more of the stories about how he got the company and how he built it the way he built it.
That's true. Episode 1, something that I never knew that was interesting was apparently he wanted Dusty to be the guy first. Like, that was surprising.
I didn't know that either. That was
because like Dusty doesn't have that Vince look.
No, but he wanted charisma. He wanted, he doesn't have the Vince look. But if you look, I don't remember the wrestler's name that Vince idolized.
Eddie Graham.
Yeah.
He was also...
He had the Dusty look.
He had the Dusty look. He had the charisma. He had the strut, but he was kind of like
also
a big...
the bleach blonde hair.
Bleach blonde hair. That was a cool story.
That was a cool story.
I looked up to him. He took me for a ride in his car and just blew through all the red lights, and I knew I wanted to be him, and went home and bleached my hair blonde. Like, even that insight was nice to hear from Vince of like, no, this is what I wanted. Like, I always wanted to be in the business, but I couldn't be, and I had these odd jobs because I couldn't be a performer. Shane, same thing. I had to work my way up, do a referee, ring announcer. Like, it was just so eerie seeing the pattern between the three of them and how that worked its way down was interesting. That was one of the threads that I liked that they pulled a little more at.
Yeah. So overall, I think it was.
I'm glad I watched it.
I didn't waste my time watching it, but it definitely wasn't what we thought. But at the end of the day, it is always still cool to sit down and be able to consume wrestling history told from the people behind it, because they did get all the big people behind a lot of the shit that are still alive to tell some of these stories, and I think that will always be cool to me. So yeah, I did enjoy it. It's always a nice refresher, but it didn't become we didn't learn as much about Vince McMahon that we anticipated. Right. And I think that part will be a little bit disappointing for the hardcore wrestling fans. Mm-hmm. The new wrestling fans are going to love it.
Yeah. It's also just nice to see a wrestling documentary on a major mainstream
that was cool,
thing. Like, that's just a cool thing to see.
Yeah,
too.
like even some of my favorite things was just some of the thumbnail images.
Yeah.
Like, there was one thumbnail image, I forgot what episode, but it was this really great picture of him, Road Warriors, Paul Bearer, like just some of those stars from that era, and it's nice to see those. Like I always pop when you see... When, kayfabe aside, you see all them. Like, I always think of the promo up on the roof at Titan Towers where all the wrestlers are there. Like, it's cool to see all of them in one photo.
It was fun to see, like, the video. I think it was them at a Monday Night Raw just playing the arcade game.
Yeah, like,
Undertaker rolled his eyes. In full makeup playing.
He's talking about how he's always wanted to be in character. And
Undertaker was pissed.
The garden with the curtain call and how that played out and how some of them were upset, but also how they were like, Vince kind of knew and was okay with it.
Right. Vince gave us the okay
to do it. Until he realized what it was. But I think that perfectly sums up, like, the control Sean and the Click had over him, and he said it. But
that was also another fuck off Brett moment when he was like, "That was the day wrestling died." Get fucked, dude.
Yeah. Get the fuck out of here.
Oh my God, Brett! Like, just go. I don't understand. He was so quiet for so long.
I know,
and everybody loved him for it because it was just so easy. And now, by the way, like, dude, come on.
Vince and Brett are not on good terms. I don't know how they were able to do business. Prior to, obviously, I know Brett was on recently and Vince is gone, but even leading after that or before that, whenever they did business together, they still seem like they absolutely hate each other. Mm-hmm. So,
and the way they talk, especially the way Vince, I think, talked
Vince
about
did not
Brett
talk kindly about Brett at all.
He didn't. No.
To me, it feels though more like Brett hates Vince more than Vince hates Brett.
I think historically, I've always felt that way. But honestly, some of the comments from this, there was some times where Brett was like, you know what, I understood Vince, I get this, and there was times where Vince was just like, no, he's a fucking idiot.
So I think the way it was set up, they did Vince's interviews last. So I think they were telling him what Brett said, and then that probably just pissed him off. I don't think it was necessarily Vince hated Brett. It was more just like, this is what Brett just said, and he's like, all right, well, fuck you, Brett.
I wondered to usually, especially the main subject gets the last kind of crack at it. But like even with the Undertaker, not concussion, no concussion, I would have loved to have heard an Undertaker rebuttal.
Yeah,
because he's probably a number one soldier behind Vince, who's like, I'm going to bat for him forever.
Except for Bruce Pritchard.
Yes, I'm like performers wise. Yeah, Pritchard, Kevin Dunn. Like those guys.
Cena's given Taker a run for his money as well.
Even said, because he's like, I'm not the one to answer this question. It's like, well, thanks. That's the answer we needed. But like, I would have loved to have heard some of the rebuttals from people, or even some more from Vince.
Right.
Where people, where the producer would be like, no, someone said this, and him have to rebuttal on the spot.
Right.
There's a couple times you could tell he was like, I don't really know what you're saying. Can you give me more? It's like, it's pretty cut and dry. You're just trying to buy time to come up with something.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, I wish even to not discuss the lawsuit stuff. I kind of wish they brought the other people back as well.
Yeah.
And, like, ask them follow-up questions.
Yeah.
100%. Like, they
might have
did it with
declined.
Meltzer and Pritchard. There was a few who it would have been
And
nice
I think
to
Pritchard
hear.
only did it because he was there that was the day they signed the Netflix deal.
Exactly, yeah. They said it was the same day. So, yeah, that was what I was hoping more for was what have you... Doesn't seem like much. Seems like outside of an interview or two or more just talking to the press.
Right.
What more did you do between February and now? Like, this was mostly baked.
It felt like it was one Pritchard. They talked to Meltzer again. And then the reporters that...
Of course they
did
talked
the
to Meltzer
story.
again. Meltzer couldn't wait.
No, he couldn't.
He loved it.
He was loving that.
I thought Meltzer did pretty good.
Yeah, I thought he was actually... For Meltzer,
had some
he was pretty
honest takes.
tame.
He wasn't too far. There was some shit where he's like, yeah, no shit. Or, like, where he wasn't, like, this air to him trying to make shit up or make things make sense. I thought he did pretty good.
My only thing is just, like, when he would say something was wrong, he felt very smug about it.
Yes,
like with the WrestleMania thing, he was like, well, it wasn't actually 93,000. It was only 78,000.
That was worse.
Dude, it was fucking 1987. 78,000 still fucking
and
impressive.
I want to say that was episode 2 because my wife came in and she was like, who cares? It was full. And I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, that fucking, the Pontiac Silverdome being full, similar to AEW and Wembley last year, who gives a fuck?
Right.
What the number was. If it's full, it's full.
Right.
Like, who cares?
If it's full, man.
To do it at that time, just like AEW doing it 4 years into their company, like, it's impressive as fuck to do that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think for those viewers who haven't seen or even like the rest of the story that the doc doesn't necessarily go into, so obviously Janelle Grant's case is now suspended, not in a bad way, but so the feds can conduct their investigation into all of the other allegations and all of the things piling
and the Janelle
on.
Grant one.
The
like,
Janelle,
they're looking into that one
and her specifically. One thing, and I heard a couple people mention no Johnny Ace in the documentary, which makes me wonder if I can't imagine he wasn't interviewed. I have a really hard time thinking he wasn't interviewed, as close as he was. So I wonder, did they interview him and they decided, okay, he's in a part of the scandal, still in it. We're not gonna air his interview.
So I could believe they would just because they have Pritchard and he has more old school knowledge than Johnny Ace.
But I wonder because he wasn't put in this. Where they were like, we're staying away from Johnny Ace. We don't want to be pulled into anything.
No, because I think they would have put him in and then said he was in allegations as well.
Because I feel like as close as he, and even we know clearly off camera they're fucking close, but I would have thought he would have been someone in there. But again, I would have thought also we would have saw more Joe Briscoe, more Pat Patterson, who Pat Patterson was in the crosshairs during the episode with the Ring Boys. That was what I didn't know as much about.
I didn't either. I didn't know about the referee.
But I didn't know like the ring announcer was the one like supposedly trafficking the black man.
Were you talking about the rape?
Yeah,
she was the referee.
She was
the lady referee. I don't know why, but that bothered me so much. They kept calling it the lady referee, the ladies title. It's like they're women. Just fucking call it women referee.
No, that Ring Boy scandal kind of. And again, Pat Patterson being openly gay and him, I don't want to say getting away with it, but like in that locker room, obviously that was a lot at any time for people to welcome him, and kudos that they did. He was great in the roles and the wrestling and everything, but like that was when they kind of swiveled around, and then at the end of the episode, lawsuit settled out of court. It's of course it was.
Yeah, proud people not comfortable talking about it.
Yeah,
that's really what it comes down to. I'm very. Now that I've pretty much completed it, I still have to finish the end of episode 6, but I'm excited to kind of deep dive into the reaction on social media. I've avoided it.
Same.
And then I'm excited to come back next week, and who knows, man, this could be something that's
I'm curious.
That's still growing. If they're going to continue build out, they've done that in the past where they've added episodes.
I was thinking the same thing.
So maybe they wanted to get this out before Netflix starts Raw in January, and maybe if not directly the Mr. McMahon, but something.
I think it could lead to something where again it could be a year from now where we get another 2 episodes, and it's like, hey, this is how the court case played out. This is what the next steps were.
It's going to be once the Janelle Grant thing comes to a close.
I don't know if you mentioned the exact quote from Simmons, but I think it's a lot of there's certain stuff that they just can't talk about.
No, so what Simmons said was, you're right, I didn't mention it. What he said was, if you're a hardcore wrestling fan and you followed wrestling forever, this isn't going to be anything new for you. This
I wish I knew that a week ago.
We're trying to get into wrestling.
Yeah.
He's like, if you're just trying to see what wrestling's about, this is to show you Vince McMahon's an asshole, basically.
And thinking back, like again, the way they promoted it, like from the producers of Tiger King, I guess that kind of makes sense. That maybe we should have taken a step back and thought about it. But I'm sorry, when I hear some of those big voices and the way it was promoted in the trailer, I'm thinking like we're gonna get some scathing, earth-shattering shit. And like, while there was some nuggets in there, I really enjoyed it. And again, just from production value was A1. Other than that, didn't really learn too much. But again, maybe we weren't the target audience.
Right,
we were not.
We were not the target audience.
The majority of the trailers were about the lawsuits, and that's like only 30 minutes of
literally
the entire
28 fucking minutes.
So it's like, That's
out of 6 hours was
right.
all it was. And I guess it makes sense. Like I remember Meltzer said, like, 4 to 5 of those episodes have been done.
Right.
Since basically 2021.
Like I said, it feels
That's
like
why in 2022 Pritchard had the opportunity to see those episodes and say, no, this is a gotcha piece.
Like I said, it feels like the first 5.5 episodes are what the original documentary was going to be, and then they tacked on the extra half hour.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. Shit happens.
It
but either way, if you watch it and you agree with our recap, we always are open to comments.
Or even if you disagree, let us know.
Or disagree.
Let us know how
it's
you
right.
feel. Especially if you aren't the biggest wrestling fan, or if you're a fairly new wrestling fan, or if you weren't as invested in certain ways that we weren't. I would love to hear a different perspective. My wife was actually telling me leading up to, I want to watch this with you. And that's why I was like, I'm not going to get through all these episodes, because sitting with her, like, naturally, I'm going to have to explain some things. And I was looking forward to it because I'm like, great. And then she heard, 6 episodes. I thought this was like a 1 hour doc. I'm out. This is too much for me. Sensory overload. But I want to hear I would love to hear opinions from non-wrestling fans about this. And I think I'm going to try to seek those out from like other people who I will not push the show on, but tell them to watch it from just a, again, cinematic standpoint, because the production of it is just so good.
Very good. We will update you on that, and it was a fun episode for sure. Jam-packed, a lot going on, a lot to talk about. Keep the conversation going. Make sure you like, subscribe, send this to your friends, send this to your wrestling friends, or maybe they're getting into wrestling. They just watched the Vince doc. You want some good insight. We are the place to be. Everything is pro wrestling. Kayfabe Cousins, another week down. We are excited, and who knows what's going to happen in the next week. See you next week. Peace.